Hi there and welcome back to my channel. This is Sean, the Honest Book Reviewer, with another book review. In this video we're discussing The Night Sister, written by Jennifer McMahon. It's not the best book I've read by this author, but it is still interesting. As a Gothic horror, it is split in different time periods, so the chapters do jump backwards and forwards in time. Not my favourite way of storytelling, and it causes some issues in the way this story is told, I think. Interrupts with the atmosphere in some parts of the book. It does pack in some twists and some surprises. In some ways it also feels like a Hitchcock movie. I got that feeling in one of the storylines anyway in this book. So if that interests you, this book may be up your alley. So in this story we have 3 different storylines, and each storyline is in a different period of time. Now we're not going back hundreds of years. We're split between late 1950s and then the most recent, I think, is around 2013, 2014 in the book. So maybe about 60 years or so in this story. The one back in the late 50s is following 2 sisters mainly and their parents, but it focuses on these 2 sisters, Rose and Sylvie, and more on Rose. Most of it's through Rose's point of view. And this storyline is really gripping. Rose's character is very engaging. The way she sees things, the way she sees people, even her sister and her family, it's very black and white. Everything is so powerful through her eyes when she sees it. And the atmosphere in this part of the book, in this storyline, is the most chilling. It's the most atmospheric. It's the most it feels like Gothic horror. And also with the hotel they're living in and they run, that feels very Gothic as well. And also feels like the movie Psycho from Hitchcock, right down to the fact there's a highway being built and they're worried that this highway is going to stop visitors coming to the hotel in the future. And it does that in the storyline as you progress through the book. So it's almost influenced by Psycho in this part of the book. The second storyline is in the 80s and it's following Amy, who's Rose's daughter. So Rose, one of the sisters in the 50s, Amy's her daughter, and it follows Amy and her 2 friends. But most of it's seen through some Amy's eyes, but also through Piper's eyes, who's one of Amy's friends in this period. This is also interesting as a storyline, not as interesting as the first storyline in my view, but it's interesting because it ties into that first storyline as these 3 girls, they start to investigate some secrets around the hotel and around Amy's family. They start digging into things and they're bringing secrets to light, and we get the feeling that that could cause trouble. We get a bit of tension in this storyline, and by this part of the story, in this storyline, the hotel's run down a lot. Now, it's not a hotel anymore, it's in disrepair. There's this tower that's been built next to the hotel, they call it the Tower of London basically, and that's being run down as well. And walking through parts of this hotel could be quite dangerous, rotten floorboards, all that sort of thing going on. And it's interesting that this hotel, or motel I should say actually, the motel in this book has its own character. And in this part of the book, in this middle storyline, the motel character is in disrepair. It feels a bit morose, it feels a bit sorry for itself, but also a bit dangerous as well. You get the sense this motel is just hiding its own secrets, and it could just, devour people up. It could make them disappear. You get that sense with this motel. The third storyline is the present day storyline. So we have Piper and Margot, they're adults now. Margot's married, about to have a baby. Piper's not married, and she's coming to stay with Margot and her husband. And also Amy, who's an adult. The book starts off with Amy supposedly killing herself and her family, or most of her family. A teenage girl survives. She hides outside and she survives, the only survivor of this slaughter. And that's interesting in the book because it's tying in all these 3 different storylines through history with this one family. So it's all about the family that Amy, Rose and Amy's daughter in this present day storyline belong to, about their secrets, about their motel secrets as well. What are they hiding? What happened in the past that's influencing the present? All that ties in through this book. Out of all the 3 different storylines in this book, I liked the one in the 50s the best. The characters are so much better presented and created and just explored in that storyline. Also the motel. We get the changes in the motel in that storyline. At the start, it's a very happy place. There's always visitors coming to the motel. They're coming for different reasons, but there's always seems to be full, and everything's happy. The kids are happy, the parents are happy, everything's sunny and fun at the start of that storyline. Then it changes, and it changes when that highway comes through. Suddenly it seems darker, and the atmosphere becomes a bit thicker, a bit denser, that dark atmosphere, not just in the motel itself, in the building, also just in the characters. And also the atmosphere between the two sisters starts to get a bit darker as well. As Rose starts to think there's something a bit strange about her older sister, Sylvie, she starts to think her older sister is not human, that she's some sort of creature that looks human but can turn into animals. At night, mainly. That's what Rose thinks. She starts to believe it strongly. And all these things start to happen in that past storyline. We start to build assumptions about those characters then, and also characters in the future. We start to build assumptions about the motel, about what happens in certain events in that past storyline. Then later on in the book, those assumptions are, they're challenged later on in the book. And we start to learn more secrets. We start to get surprises and twists in the story. And that's where the author is at her strongest as well, with those surprises and twists. It seems in every book that Jennifer McMahon writes, there's some really well-timed and well-crafted twists and surprises in the mix, and your assumptions in all the books I've read so far anyway are challenged. So from the storyline in the 50s, we have the question about Sylvie. When Sylvie was 18, she vanished. One night she just left the house and vanished, never to be seen again. And no one knows what happened to her. No one's heard from her even as well all those years. So there's a big secret about what happened to Sylvie. And in the middle storyline and the present day storyline, that secret starts to come to the surface as more people give away answers to that. And it's just interesting the way the author builds that in the book. We're given little piece by little piece. Those onion layers of that mystery start to unfold bit by bit. And it's very controlled in the book. And this author seems very skilled at controlling that. Another mystery in this book all hinges on what is room 29. The motel that was built, there are 28 rooms, but we're given messages in different storylines about a 29th room. Is there a hidden room in the motel, and what does it hide? While I did enjoy this book overall, and it is a bit of a middling book for me, at middle of the range, it's that present day storyline that fell flat a lot. The start of that storyline was gripping. The start of the storyline is all about finding out about that, mass murder that goes on in this house, multiple murder. That was gripping and chilling. But then, from then on, until towards maybe the last couple of chapters in this present day storyline, it's quite bland actually, and quite dull, and doesn't have any atmosphere at all to speak of, and I found my attention wavering in those parts of the book. Thank goodness with these different storylines changing in different chapters, we had the very past storyline ongoing in the book, and that kept my interest. It gave me something to look forward to in the book, because I just found that present day storyline quite dull actually. There was just nothing there to really grip you. Even the characters felt quite bland compared to how they felt in different storylines in the past. And while the twists were engaging, they were surprising, it did feel like the same twist being told time and time again in different storylines in the book. And that just meant the impact of those twists just wasn't the same. Once you learnt the twist once, did we need to see it again? Did we need to see different characters in different storylines learn the same thing? I'm not sure we did. The conclusion of the book, I'm just not sold on that actually. It fell flat as well for me, the end of the book. I just felt like it was tacked on. It felt like there was no planning to the end of the book. I just felt like it was written up in half a second and, it's done. I've done enough. I'm just going to finish it there. That's what it felt like. It should have been recrafted, I think, retold. Give it a bit more of a chilling ending, I think, because the ending didn't feel chilling at all. I would prefer to have more open questions and more chills down the spine at the end of this book. Just something to make it seem a bit more gripping and more engaging towards the end. Rose is my favourite character in this book, but the Rose when she's a teenager in the 50s. Her point of view then is so absolute. There's no room for doubt. Everything's black and white. thoughts about her family, thoughts about herself, about the motel, about the town where she lives, about everything is black and white. And I just love the character Rose in that part of the book because she's very engaging, very gripping. You start to wonder about her as well. Start to wonder, is what she's seeing and thinking real? Is she stable herself? Is she trustworthy as a character? What's going on with her? You start to have doubts about Rose as well, and that's the true strength, I think, in this character, in this section of the book. As characters go, Rose as a teenager is much better than Rose as an adult. The Rose as an adult, I didn't really care for that much. We don't get to see much of Rose as an adult, by the way. We see her later on in the present day storyline mainly. But as a teenager, brilliant character. Amy as a character, now we get to see Amy, of course, when she's a teenager the most. When she's an adult, it's very quick. At the very start of the book, we see her for one chapter only. But as a teenager, we have many chapters with Amy. And she's another character that's, her views are very absolute and there's no doubt in what she thinks. That almost feels like a family trait, really. And Amy is Rose's daughter after all. So Amy as a teenager, I just really like this character. Very engaging. I like the whole investigation thing she goes through, trying to find out secrets about the motel and about her own family, really. It just feels like those books you're reading as a teenager, well, I did anyway. Things like Nancy Drew and Hardy Boys and Three Investigators, that type of book, with Amy and her two friends at the time, in the 80s, when they're trying to find out these clues and delve into this mystery. It gave away that kind of vibe well in the story. So Amy as a character as a teenager, much better than Amy as that small section as an adult, even though that small section as an adult was very gripping and chilling. Her teenage character, because that's the way we see her most in the book as a teenager, but it's a very engaging character. The motel is used as a character in this book as well. In a lot of Gothic horrors, buildings, some sort of object, they're used as characters to give atmosphere, and the motel gives a lot of atmosphere in this story. And it changes people's own perceptions and the way they think about themselves as well. That's what I think in this book. At the very start, the motel's happy. It's a happy place. Everything's fun and sunny. Everything's carefree. And even the motel itself feels that way. People feel happy when they're in the motel, when they're near the motel. Everything's peaceful, it's all bliss. And then when that highway comes in and stops people coming and staying at the motel starts to change. It gets a bit darker, it gets a bit more dangerous. You get the feeling the motel feels sorry for itself, or it starts getting broody and starts thinking, dark thoughts. And those dark thoughts start to invade the characters' thoughts as well, and how the characters see themselves and each other. And that's where this atmosphere of the motel is used as a character. And then when we see the motel in disrepair, it's starting to fall down, the tower they built next to it starting to fall down, it just feels like a very dangerous place. It feels like it's been neglected. And from the neglect, it feels like it's got a really evil attitude. It feels like it's, out for revenge, basically, this motel. That's the sense I got when I was reading this story. I kept thinking, what's this motel going to do? Because it just feels like it's very dangerous. That if you walk into that motel now, when it's in disrepair and falling down and crumbling in some sections, you wonder what's going to happen to these characters. And the motel itself feels like one of the biggest characters in this book. While I did enjoy this book, it's not my favourite Jennifer McMahon book I've read so far. I rated it a 3 out of 5. A 3 because of some of the twists and surprises, even though they seem to be repetitive in different storylines. But some of the characters in this book are also outstanding. Rose as a teenager is outstanding. Amy as a teenager is outstanding. And the motel. The atmosphere the motel gives to this book is also outstanding. So the 3 stars are for those 3 things. The ending of the book I didn't really enjoy. The fact that this book is about creatures, also creature horror, I didn't mind that so much, but it just felt like also a bit of a fairy tale in the way it's told. It felt like it was almost a Disney type Gothic horror with the way the creatures were talked about and described in this book. That's what I got from this book, and it did let me down a little bit as a reader, because even though it's a Gothic horror, and a lot of Gothic horrors are more about atmosphere than about shocks and about gore and things like that, I wanted a little bit more horror in this story. On my channel, I review many horrors. If you enjoy horrors, check out my channel and subscribe. On the screen now is a link to a video for another book I'm sure you'll enjoy.